welcome to a very special episode of Retro Effects. If you have watched our Two Player Tuesdays, you know my friend Blake, we're going to start like a little side project that we have aptly called Movie Effects. We're two pretty big movie buffs. Blake is probably the biggest aficionado of horror movies that I know, and probably in the greater New Orleans area. If you know anybody else, comment, come on in. We can certainly talk about it. But as far as I know, actually outside of New Orleans, I don't know anybody who's a bigger horror fan than Blake. Since it's October and Halloween is right around the corner, we got together and thought that this would be a real good time to kind of just lead into our movie stuff, right? So today we're just going to talk to Blake, and I'm going to kind of do like a little interview, and we're gonna get some information. Some of you guys, if you watch the Two Player Tuesdays, you kind of just like, oh, this guy just showed up out of nowhere. So we're going to talk about our background, his background in horror, and just ask a couple questions and kind of get in the whole Halloween spirit. So Blake, if you want to say hi.
No, I don't want to at all.
But yeah. I kind of figured that you're not really the introduction type, but that's why we're doing this. So two huge movie buffs. We overlap with a lot of the same kind of movies, but I delve more into like the 80s sword and sandal, fantasy, and he's more horror, and then we kind of overlap with our sci-fi choices.
Yeah.
So that being said, let's talk about just real quick, Blake, what got you into horror? Like,
There was a movie called Monster Squad,
mm-hmm.
and the first thing I was ever a fan of was probably Frankenstein's monster.
Okay.
Like, it was the first thing that...
Like,
that
bolts in the head, like...
Yeah, well, Monster Squad kind of had all the Universal... It was a cross between Goonies and the classic Universal Monsters movies. Yeah, so it was a really cool movie, and I remember getting big into Frankenstein's monster because he's portrayed as the hero, and it kind of made me go to the video store and start renting these classic horror movies, and that's how I got introduced to Boris Karloff, Bela Lugosi, and all the
original
classics.
Frankenstein, the original Dracula.
Yeah, because all those characters are in there. They got Frankenstein, Wolfman, Mummy. So it just it kind of created that desire for me to learn more.
Was this made by Universal?
No. Which is why a lot of things are different. Wow. Like, for instance, legally, you can, because they were public domain, you can use the name Frankenstein, the name Dracula, but I did hear that. You can't do certain things. Like, so, for instance, in Monster Squad, the bolts are on the head, not the neck, because that's Universal's thing. So if you put the bolts on the neck, you're getting sued. So there was little small things they did.
Minute details.
Yeah, they changed. And so then I'll never forget, in my elementary school, there was books about the original Universal Monsters movies that I would rent, and it was one of the first things that made me want to learn how to read, because I think I'm in kindergarten, maybe even pre-K, reading these books, and then once I found out there was these black and white movies, it never bothered me they were black and white. I know a lot of kids that came up in our era would have been bothered by that, but for me, like, it was just Frankenstein was what I was all about. I really got big into the character of Frankenstein's monster, because I liked how he was misunderstood, and he was kind of the good guy. Everything that he was about sort of became the first thing I became a fan of.
And so what you're saying, he was basically the main character in Monster Squad, and then supplemented with the other characters? Or?
There was the kids' characters that were the that you could relate to, like in the Goonies. Mm-hmm. He was more of the sloth in that movie.
Okay.
Like, he was the big, strong guy that could protect the kids. Yeah. So Frankenstein was trying to be manipulated by Dracula in the movie, but he decides he identifies with the kids, he's going to protect them. So it really made me latch on to Frankenstein's monster, and that kind of was the first any horror-related anything that made me latch on. Okay. So before I got into superheroes, before I got anything, I thought Frankenstein's monster was just like the coolest thing ever. Yeah,
and so just a little. I don't watch scary movies. I don't watch horror. I like a couple things. There's a couple 80s movies I like. I've never seen Monster Squad, so that's something that we're gonna watch together, and we're gonna put it on on film, and we're gonna make an episode. But that's something that like in over a decade that we've been friends, we never really sat down and did that. So like this is gonna kind of lead into stuff like that where I don't want to even say what the show was with where they would watch movies and they had the robots and the guy, because I don't think we did. I don't know if I could say that, but it's going to be something like that. Mm-hmm. So this little kind of like introduction with his background, I really think is going to serve as a nice platform to us to just expand way past video games and go into the movies and go into literature and go into comic books.
It's cool because it's like a bridging path of different nerd stuff. Like I've actually do a lot about different RPG video games, which I was not growing up a fan of. Right. So it's an overlap that it's kind of teaching each other about different things.
It really is, and I think the dynamic will really work. And I think it'll be entertaining, and I hope you guys enjoy this. So I guess I was going to ask about your first experience. So I guess that would be Monster Squad would be your first experience. Do you have anything that you followed up with after Monster Squad that you're like, that's what I like, or not a fan of that?
It was the Universal Monsters. It was because those movies were really okay for kids, because the Universal Monsters were already those characters, so it kind of built me into it. And then as I got a little bit older, and probably way too young to be watching them, but as I got a little bit older, that was when I started getting the guts to be. I was the kid that when we came to the video stores, the Blockbusters or the local video chains, I immediately was the one that, if my dad said I can get 2 movies, it was always a wrestling pay-per-view I had seen a million times.
Yep.
And
I had done that,
and a random scary movie. So like I would always be like, all right, let me try Nightmare on Elm Street. Let me try, and it just became a little at a time building.
So let's define the Universal Monsters: Frankenstein, Dracula,
Wolfman, Creature from the Black Lagoon, Mummy, Phantom of the Opera. Like there was that whole, and Phantom of the Opera may not have been a Monster Squad, but like anything that had the Universal Monsters labeled on that re-release of the VHS, I would go through and watch them, which I think also gave me an appreciation for the black and white movies, because I know a lot of people my age, if they saw a movie in black and white, it was a no-go.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was especially, and something that I appreciate this day, and I don't want to go too far into it, but some of those spaghetti westerns, I appreciate more as an adult than I did as a kid, because it was a little dry. I mean, black and white is when you're 5 and 6 is a little dry, but if you're into horror, I can see as a kid you kind of being into that, because it
was also the only other way I could see Frankenstein.
Correct.
In the way that I liked him, I was like, oh, all right, well, where else do I go to see this?
And maybe I'm wrong, but I think as a kid, the Universal Monsters are a little bit less intimidating than when you're older and you get some of those 80s slashers.
Oh, for sure. Because I mean, like, when you look at it, like, even with Dracula, he's much scarier than Frankenstein, because Frankenstein's always the misunderstood monster, but then you look at Dracula and he's just flat out a bad guy, but still it's not like Freddy Krueger where it's like gory and blood and that kind of stuff, so you had to ease your way in. Like, I can remember trying to transition from that and running Hellraiser and seeing like hooks ripping people's flesh and be like, all right, like hiding behind a pillow. I'll never forget leaving a sleepover after watching Stephen King's It.
Oh, wow.
Like, it was...
And I have watched it.
I made it through it, but I can remember like calling my dad like, I don't want to sleep here.
Yeah, I mean, and I have watched it, but like, for me, it was I couldn't even watch any of that as a kid. But I imagine something like the Universal Monsters would be a little bit more
for sure
introductory to
the
horror. Right. So that being said, like, give me like a top 5 or a top 10 of your favorites. Give me a top 5. Rattle it off your head.
My all-time favorite horror movie, I got them on me, is Michael Myers.
Michael Myers.
I love the original Halloween. It's my number 1. My number 2 is
1979.
78. Yeah.
Okay.
Number 2, The Shining. I think that's Jack Nicholson's best performance. Brilliant. Love everything about it. 3, Evil Dead 2, and I know a lot of people like the original. The reason I like Evil Dead 2 is Ash kind of finds his bravado. And that one's a little bit more horror comedy, but I like Ash's bravado he gets in it.
Because I have seen the Evil Dead, and I do enjoy the Evil Dead.
Yeah. I mean, Bruce Campbell is just, he's great. 4, I'd probably go Dawn of the Dead.
Okay.
Now, not the remake. I do not.
But the original, what was the guy's name?
Ken Foree. Oh, George Romero is the director.
Yeah, okay.
Ken Foree was the reason I love that movie so much. He's he played the dad on Kenan and Kel years later.
Really?
But he's this big, buff black dude, and like in the movie, he plays this police officer that don't take crap off any of the zombies. He'll punch him in the face. He does a gorilla press over the side of a.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I really love that movie. And then for 5, I think I'd have to go. It's a rough one because I love horror so much. But for 5, I'd probably have to go with maybe. Man, it's a rough one. It's so hard to pick when you have so many
give me
favorites.
5, 6, 7. I mean, just rattle some like honorable mentions. You know, so just.
Yeah, I think for 5, I'd have to go. The OG Nightmare on Elm Street.
Okay.
Just because it's so good. Like, there's so many different. But that same list I just gave you, it would probably differ in 2 weeks. I love horror so much. Like, the only one that's not changing is Halloween. Halloween is my overall favorite.
I understand.
The Shining is one of those other ones that it can't go anywhere. It's my stuff. Like, that's why I will lifelong recommend Dr. Sleep. It doesn't get any credit, but that recent Ewan McGregor sequel they made, it really paid homage to The Shining, and it's really good.
Oh, really?
Yeah, very good.
So tell me what Dr. Sleep is. Is that the sequel?
It's Ewan McGregor playing grown-up Danny Torrance, the kid.
The kid from The Shining.
It's fantastic. The director's cut is the way to go if you watch it.
Okay, all right. So that's your top 5, and I mean, do you have any honorable mentions? Do you have any okay, well this is maybe just it didn't make the top 5, but I mean this is up there for me, you know, as far
there's a lot of them. Like Nightmare on Elm Street, Dream Warriors, which is one of the better,
third one, right? That's the third one.
One of the better ones.
I remember the song by Dawkins, right? Because I was a big 80s metal
for sure,
guy. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
Man, there's just so many honorable mentions that you can put on there. Like, I am a huge fan of the entire trilogy of Ramiro. So, like, the original Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, I think he did such a great job on that.
See, I had heard so many good things about the filmmaking of Ramiro. Never got into the zombie things. Matter of fact, that'd probably be the last thing I got into was the zombie. I just wasn't into it. I did so. Aside from Resident Evil 1 and Resident Evil 2 on the original PlayStation, just because back then that was groundbreaking, but I've heard so many good things about the actual filmmaking and just everything that he does that, you know, one day I might sit down with you and watch that movie, you know what I'm saying?
Because the whole thing about the Ramiro movies, too, is like, it's more, and The Walking Dead sort of try to touch on this, but with Ramiro, it's way more about how, when the chips are down, people become the bad guy. Because, like, the zombies are a backdrop, but you really start to see, like, when the chips are down, it's people that are the bad guys.
They kind of turn on each
other.
other.
The zombies are sort of the natural disaster. It reminded me a lot of living through Hurricane Katrina. Like, the people end up being worse than the thing that's happening. You know, like people turning on each other and natural resources being. So it's
scarce. Yeah, scarcity. A little econ term there for you. Well, look, that's interesting, and I definitely want to delve into a little bit of that with you. Definitely don't want to sit and watch it by myself. Will not do that. Okay.
I'm excited for you to watch Monster Squad, though, because I think being a kid of that era, you're going to really enjoy it.
Especially if you said Goonies, because Goonies is in my top 5.
It really is. Goonies meets the Universal Monsters, the way I would describe that.
Now, my top 5 movies of all time will change drastically by the day. I mean, it could be, but I'm not going to get into that because he and I could talk about just regular top 5 movies for probably about a day.
Yeah.
Here's one, and I remember I watched a lot of TNT when I was a kid, right? So I watched
Monster Fest with
So I didn't watch Monster Fest. I knew of Monster Fest because I watched Dinner and a Movie. The song Beans and Corn, right? So that whole thing, they always made a dish and then watched a movie. But I knew that they had Monster Fest, or actually I think it was Monster Vision.
Yeah, with Joe Bob Briggs.
Joe Bob Briggs.
Yeah.
And on other channels who do video games and movies, he's probably been on there or something. Was there anything else besides maybe Monster Vision that you watched that was kind of a host? I know there was Elvira, and I think there was a local guy.
Yeah, Morgus the Magnificent.
There you go.
He's the reason I became a big horror fan, because aside from Monster Squad, Morgus the Magnificent, who was a local horror host, he was on. I can remember my great grandmother getting her hair done every Friday night by my grandmother, and we would watch it. And it was how I got introduced to so many crazy horror movies. It would be like Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, or they would show the original Universal monster movies and ones that were obscure. Like I knew who Creature from the Black Lagoon was, and I knew who all those other ones. But they would be like The Invisible Man, and all these crazy, public access horror movies that were on here. And unfortunately, he passed away this year. But that was
I did hear that.
Yeah, it was a big part of why I became a horror fan. Morgus the Magnificent was our local horror host.
Yeah, so if you haven't heard of him, you're probably not from New Orleans. I transplanted here in about 2008 from Pennsylvania. Blake grew up, born and raised in New Orleans. So I know that I've seen like maybe Facebook posts or Blake and a couple of others or circle of friends have talked about Morgus the Magnificent. I never really knew what it was, because I didn't grow up here. But just to kind of clarify, it was a local access television show where he would kind of host, almost like Elvira, right?
Somewhat like that, but instead of just introducing the movie, he would have an entire show that were skits. So like he would have his own little thing. It would be like a 45-minute to an hour TV show wrapped around him doing something crazy that was like his own storyline that tied into whatever movie it was. So like he would do a story, if he's showing a vampire movie, the whole thing would be him trying to hide vampires, and then at the very end of the episode he'd be like, there's vampires loose in New Orleans, and it would end. And I can remember being a little kid like, there's vampires loose in New Orleans. So like it was fun little stuff like that. And and the guy, I mean, man, he was around for years. He even went on to do it in Chicago for a little while. Like,
he did. Really?
He was in Chicago for a little bit. Like,
so any Chicagoans who remember Morgus the Magnificent, drop it, and we'll talk about it. But
he was a really cool person too. Like he did a few. I didn't have the privilege of meeting him, but there was I have a friend that did. He used to do like meet and greets with people, and he would just talk and tell the story.
Like a Comic-Con or something?
Characters. No, he would just do like he would Sanger Theater or something. Just have people.
Oh, he would just have like his own thing.
Just have people come and he'd talk to him. He would do it out of character, and then he would talk about the character he created and stuff.
Oh wow!
It was very fun, and it's the reason a lot of people from this area got big into horror.
Yeah, and look, if you're not from New Orleans, if you've never been to New Orleans, Halloween in New Orleans is a thing.
Oh yeah.
Right? I mean, it is. You got Voodoo Fest. You got. I mean, tell me about some of the haunted houses. Actually, funny story. First haunted house I ever been to was with this guy.
Yep.
And a circle of our friends, and we went to the House of Shock.
Funny story. The House of Shock. Morgus coined that phrase before the haunted house took it.
Really?
Yeah, he came up with that. That was his thing. They stole that and made it into their haunted house.
Oh wow! I didn't know
always. It's a full circle thing.
Yeah. So, God, this wasn't even. I was in my late 20s.
Yeah.
And it was the first haunted house I went to. That don't judge. Right? So, but I went with him, and it was an experience. I've never been to one after that, and I probably will never go again. But I can say that I went to the House of Shock, and I think doesn't one of the guys from Pantera own that, or did own that?
He was one of the people who started it.
Started it.
Yeah.
And who was that?
Phil Anselmo, the singer. The singer is the only one from down here. All the other guys were from Texas. Phil is from New Orleans.
Okay, great. So we talked about the Universal monsters, and a lot of those come from books, like Frankenstein's Mary Shelley, Dracula's Bram Stoker. Did you delve into any literature Like any classic books or anything, maybe like an extended universe of any of those?
I love horror comics. I've read my entire life.
Okay.
As far as the books, I loved Mary Shelley's. I'm sorry. I love Bram Stoker's Dracula. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein bored me to tears. I tried to do a book report on it. I couldn't. It was too much pseudoscience. I just couldn't.
Okay.
There wasn't enough horror. It was just like too much pseudoscience.
And I haven't read them, so I don't know.
Bram Stoker's Dracula is a good book.
I started to read it, and I was a little interested, and I think I moved or something. So I had moved 9 times in like 11 years. So every time I move, I misplace stuff. Anybody who's moved frequently, any of those army families out there, or like military families that move a lot, you could probably agree with me. But like every time you move, you kind of misplace stuff. I sold my video game collection like 3, 4, 5 times, and this is like my 6th incarnation. So anybody who can relate to that, I mean, but that's when I started to read it. Did you? I mean, was there anything else? Did you ever come across any scripts or anything?
Yeah, I've read scripts of unpublished movies that didn't happen that I wish would have. Like I've several Freddy versus Jasons that were supposed to happen years before they did.
Before they actually did.
I think the cool thing about the Dracula book is it's all written in the form of journals. So it's different people's journals from different point of views. It's pretty cool. But like I said, Frankenstein was rough because it's just kind of. It reminds me a lot of why the De Niro movie wasn't very good because Robert De Niro looked great as Frankenstein, but if you try to watch the movie, you're like, oh man, it's pretty long-winded.
Yeah, is it? It's a little dry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and look, some of that dialogue.
I could be. I mean, trust me, I'm sure there's a lot of people that think it's a classic.
And I'm sure again, these are our opinion and Blake's opinion. If you have your own opinion, that's okay too.
Yeah.
I mean, if you like it, then you like it. It's no big deal. So you talked about you got into like horror comic books. Give me some of the comic books that you really got into or really delved, or maybe things that are like fringe horror, not like exactly horror. Like I remember you were big into Swamp Thing.
I love Swamp Thing.
Yeah.
Especially the Alan Moore run. I thought Swamp Thing was a great comic. Werewolf by Night is another really good comic.
Tell me about that one because I don't know anything about it.
It's Werewolf by Night is a Marvel. Yes.
Okay.
It is a Marvel book, and it's a very cool it's like almost different than every other werewolf book because he can control himself when he's in his werewolf form.
Oh, so he's like
he's sort of a superhero.
So that would be kind of nice. Like, just to get that perspective of like when you're a wolf, what are you thinking?
Robert Kirkman, who wrote wrote until it ended, The Walking Dead, has another one called The Astounding Wolfman. That's a very good book.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Same thing. He's in control.
And let's kind of discuss this. The Walking Dead was a comic before a show.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And the comic's very different. Like the show and the comic, they purposely zig when they should have zagged on the show, so people like me who read the book can't tell you where it's going.
Oh, okay. All right.
But I like both. I haven't watched the show in quite some time, but I enjoyed the books.
Okay. Did they ever do any kind of Universal comics? Did they do a Dracula comic? Did they do anything?
Here and there, several people. Like Marvel has their own version of Dracula and Frankenstein. DC does.
Okay.
As far as like Universal themselves, they have, but they've been very quick little one-offs that kind of just retell the story.
Well, you said it was public domain, so you can.
They've been around so long. Anybody can use. There's just you can't do certain things that Universal created. Like you can't do the bolts in the necks. You can't because Frankenstein in the book is not Frankenstein in the.
It just can't have like a likeness.
Yeah.
Almost similar to that lawsuit that EA Sports lost years ago with the NCAA athletes not getting paid and their likeness being used in a video game. So I guess that would be kind of akin to that. Yeah. To anybody who's kind of familiar with that kind of scenario, we were talking about comic books. You're a comic guy, and that's one thing that you collect. But do you have any horror collections?
I have a huge Bela Lugosi Dracula collection.
The original Dracula, on the movies.
He's my guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love Bela Lugosi is my favorite actor. So I own all his movies on DVD and VHS. And, any sideshow,
any platform.
Anything they put out of him, I collect. I really enjoy his.
You have any statues or?
I have a lot of Bela Lugosi Dracula statues. I have a replica of the ring he wore in the movie Dracula.
Oh wow!
They only made a very limited amount. It comes in a case that's actually the coffin that he has in the movie.
Oh wow!
Is what the ring comes in. So
really?
They only made. The movie came out in 1931. They only made 1,931 of them. It's pretty cool. It's a nice little.
So okay, so they made 1931 copies because it came out in 19.
It's a pretty cool.
That's a nice little homage. Yeah. You have any collections? Anything else? You got I know you have. You mentioned the huge Dracula collection. Do you have a DVD or a VHS of all the other horror?
A lot of horror stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
All of that. Michael Myers and Dracula are like my number ones that I make sure I have everything on.
So Michael Myers and Dracula like 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Specifically Bela Lugosi Dracula.
Specifically.
Okay.
I don't think I own anything else Dracula besides Bela Lugosi Dracula.
Okay. Talking about collecting, and if obviously you guys know that I'm a pretty big video game collector. Have a lot of stuff. We play. He's a video game guy. I would say he's more horror movies. I'm more video games, and we kind of meet in the middle with a lot of stuff. It was with speaking from me and my specific question. Is there any horror video games that you enjoyed?
I am a big fan of the Resident Evil games.
Okay, Resident Evil.
Yeah, especially like the Resident Evil 2. Any of the Resident Evil games that have Leon. I love Leon.
So you're a big Leon guy.
Yeah. That's why I'm so stoked about this upcoming Netflix animated series they're doing.
Tell me about that, because I didn't know about it.
They're doing it's going to be, I believe, Claire Redfield and Leon. It's like an entire series about them. It's going to be in 3D animation.
Kind of like the Castlevania one?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a big not being a horror fan, I love Castlevania. Castlevania is probably one of my favorite things.
I actually really like their Netflix stuff too.
The Netflix special was very good. Very adult. So kids, get your parents' permission before you watch it. But it was good because it tied in Castlevania 3 for the Nintendo Entertainment System and one of the PS2 ones. I forget which one. But speaking of parents' permission, so just wrapping this up, is there anybody who's kind of like, say like you're talking to me, I've never gotten into horror, but I want, or like a kid, like say like you got a nephew or a son or something or daughter, and you're like, okay, they're trying to get into horror. Give me some things that you would recommend.
Honestly, the same thing that got me into it. I really think Monster Squad is a great doorway in because it's that 80s PG-13, so you're gonna get a curse word here or there, but you're not gonna get any F-bombs or anything. But you're gonna get a curse word here or there. You're not gonna get any gore, and it is a little scary. But
so there's no gore?
No.
Oh, really?
But it is. Like I said, it's one of those 80s PG-13, but if you're okay with your kid watching Goonies, you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not bad. But that would be, like, that, to me, that was my gateway, and I think it's a perfect gateway in.
Okay, so if you're new to horror, and you're just kind of getting into it, Monster Squad, would you recommend the Universal monster movies?
It's just, nowadays, tastes are so different, it just, if you think they won't mind black and white, is the thing.
Right, and I was just thinking of that because kids these days with their filters and everything, I think people are more susceptible to watch a black and white film.
I hope. I've seen adults that refuse to watch anything black and white. Unfortunately.
Yeah. Now, again, when I was a kid, I really didn't like watching black and white, but now I do appreciate it. Especially some of those old samurai films and the old spaghetti westerns, like I said.
Yeah.
Kurosawa, I'm huge into.
Yeah.
Again, going off of the whole theme of getting kids into it or whatever. I know you're a Universal guy. Have you ever been to Universal Studios? I think they have a Halloween.
Yeah, Halloween Horror Nights is awesome.
Okay, so tell me about Halloween Horror Nights because I've never been. I'd like to go. So if you're going to sell me on Halloween Horror Nights, what would you tell me about
It's like walking into whatever movie the house is themed after. So like they did.
Oh, really?
My favorite one I've ever been in was they did a Freddy Krueger one where you literally walk through the hospital from Freddy vs. Jason with all the kids that are supposed to be like on Hypnosil, the no dream drug. They all sit up at the same time. the Freddy music starts playing, and you walk into a courtyard, and you're in front of Freddy's actual house from the movie. I mean, like, it was like being in the movie. It got me to jump, and I'm not a jumpy guy.
Oh,
like,
wow. Yeah.
There was a point where Freddy jumped out from behind the curtain and grabbed me, and I was like, whoa, all right.
I definitely am a jumpy guy. Anybody knows me, I'm a jumpy guy. You definitely are not.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And it got me. So, I mean, like, it's one of those things where, like, it's like stepping inside of the movie. It's I can't recommend it enough if you like them. The other cool thing about that compared to some place like, and I'm not putting, the House of Chuck doesn't exist anymore, but I wouldn't put them down anyway. They were way more into the graphic horror and showing blood and stuff. Like, Halloween Horror Nights,
was gory and satanic.
It's way more family friendly, and they're not going to touch you or anything, but what I liked about it the most is, like, it was literally like walking into the movie. Like, they did one based off Benicio del Toro's Wolfman. The makeup effects, it looked like the Wolfman from the movie right in front. It was crazy.
Were you a Lon Chaney guy? Because I know...
I loved Lon Chaney Jr.,
Yeah, he was a... Because I know he's known for, like, kind of doing his own makeup.
Well, that was his dad. His dad was the one who did Phantom of the Opera and all that.
Oh,
his son is the one that was the Wolfman.
Okay.
They were both amazing.
So just to kind of wrap this up, is there anything that you want to kind of tell them? I know we're going to do a segment where Blake has a bunch of horror tattoos, so we're going to do a little close-up. But just to kind of, before we do that, is there anything that you want to just kind of have a message for anybody watching this, getting into the movie section of our little creative YouTube stuff, and is there anything you want to kind of send them off with?
Just mainly, there's something for everyone in the genre, and if you want to find your way in, you just have to find certain styles that you like. Some people will like the zombie, some people like the slasher stuff, but there's something for everybody in the genre, and it's not a big. It's all a matter of taste. It's almost like a comic book when, it's like Batman's not for everybody. Some people like Superman. You're going to find that exact same thing in horror where you just have to find what it is you like and where you go from there.
I think that's pretty good advice. I think that might be for any kind of thing that you're interested in. So, lastly, you guys have probably seen him in any of the videos and maybe not close up. Let's get a close up of some of his tattoos. I mean, he's got some nice artwork here.
Yeah.
So who do you got there?
It's my Michael Myers.
Okay.
We've got Dracula and his crest, and then my other one. Oh, wrong one. My other one is Ash from Evil Dead.
Oh wow. Awesome. Well, Blake, thanks really 1,000 times for opening up and kind of just sitting down with me and honestly, I have learned some stuff ever since when we were collaborating for this video. I learned a ton of stuff, and it makes me kind of just want to sit down with you and watch some of this stuff and have my experience with you, and you can be that. It's always nice when you get interested in something but you're new to it, to have somebody that's familiar with and kind of just to be your guide a little bit. And I'm definitely looking forward to sitting down and watching some films with you, and then us going on this our idea of getting into our movie reviews and the films and just talking about the stuff that we like and just learning about it. So again, Blake, thanks for sitting down with us. Happy Halloween to everybody. This is probably going to drop on Halloween, and thanks for tuning in. Like, subscribe, share. If you have a top 5 horror, drop it in the comments below. And, thanks for the support. I mean, we're starting to get a little bit bigger, and it's going to, it's taken a little bit of time, especially when we all work full-time jobs. We're not full-time YouTubers. But in the short time that we've done this, all of us, me, Blake, Derek behind the camera that you don't see, my friend Matt Galka back home, who really kind of manages the social media, and he's really good with that. So between all of us, I'm really hoping that you guys will enjoy this content and really kind of help us get bigger so we can provide more of a platform for you. So again, thank you so much. Like, subscribe, share, and I'll see you guys for the next movie. I think we're going to do, we have probably about 7 or 8 movies that we're going to do very shortly, and I hope you guys like it. So, thank you for coming.
Make sure you follow us on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, Twitter, Gmail. Don't forget to like and subscribe.